Alrighty, folks, just outside of the Win Poker Room now. I believe our name just got called for the 510. The grind don't stop. Let's hit in there and see if we cannot win a couple of dollars.
Welcome back to another episode of Close to Broke. My name is Kieran, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you folks back. Today is episode 41 or something. I don't even remember, but it's still wonderful to have you guys here. This session ends up being quite the roller coaster of emotions, and you guys will see how the variance plays in this game. But I'll let you guys know now, without spoiling it, there's a huge bluff that one of our opponents runs through, and let's see if I have the cojones to call him down. Otherwise, this episode is a ton of fun. We're playing at the win and we're playing 5, 10, 20 for most hands. Either way, I hope you guys enjoy this session. It's going to be a ton of fun. And I'll see you guys in the WSOP streets, if not here in LA. Deuces! Alrighty, here we find ourselves playing 5-10 here at the win, and this is very early off in the session. Early position decides to open here to $30, and a friend here from the cutoff decides $110 is a better price to pay. Well, that's not really going to fly with me if I'm being quite honest, and I'm here to play aggressive. I'm here to set the precedent. We're playing some good, strong poker today. I'm feeling great. I feel like I haven't played this well in my entire life. Pull out some big boy chips, and we're going to make a big 3-bet. $330 to go. Folds back to the initial raiser that decides to fold. And our friend here in the cutoff thinks about it for a little second and decides to make the fold. The old 4-bet from the small bind. Feels so good to get it through with a bluff like this, but we're absolutely laser focused, locked in. Let's go. This next hand is an absolute doozer magoozer, so strap up into whatever kind of cowboy saddle, straddle, whatever the hell you want to call it. Let's get into this hand. Early position decides to open to $60. The straddle is definitely on in this hand. Next tack decides to make the call, which is the jokester mask guy. Gets over to me on the button. I'm definitely going to be choosing to 3-bet this hand and not call. I feel like calling is just throwing away money. Folding is the best play. 3-betting would be the only way to go about it if you're going to be playing this hand in position. I decide to make it $240 to go. It folds back over to the initial raiser, who thinks about it for a little bit but decides to make the fold. And then this next to act player, I'm almost certain that he's going to decide to make the fold, but he actually tanks forever and makes the call. Didn't expect to be going heads up to this flop with the jokester character, but it is what it is. We are going to the flop in position. Let's see if we can catch a bit of this board. The flop comes 10-9-6 with 2 clubs and a diamond. It checks to me, and I decide to c-bet here. I want to go a little bit on the larger side here, considering I do have that gut shot as well as 2 overs, and this is a pretty connected board texture. I decide to bet $310, and the villain pretty quickly decides to make the call. The churn is a very interesting card as it comes the Jack of Clubs. It does bring the front door flush draw, but it does improve me to top pair. A couple of other hands improve, including King Queen, but beyond that, not a great deal changes. The only thing that's really surprising to me is that the jokester character decides to lead out for $700. This is not a card I think he'd be leading here very often, but it's still very interesting to say nonetheless. This is a hand that I think that I can definitely make the call with, but depending on most river situations, I'm probably going to have to let it go. But I do decide to make the call. The river comes an absolute brick. It's a deuce, and he tanks forever. I'm not exaggerating. The guy tanks for probably a minute and a half before deciding to check. But I don't have a decision here besides just making the check back. This is a pretty scary run out, and it's not often that I'm going to be super good here And again, what am I targeting for value? Not a whole lot. So I'm happy to check it back. And I look at his hand as he presents 8-9. So his flop pair turned to an open-ended straight draw on the turn. And I don't mind the lead there considering he is blocking the straight. But nonetheless, we do take this pot down. A huge pot coming our way early in the session. And I will not lie to you guys. That will make me very much happy. In this next hand, we find ourselves in the big blind. The small blind decides to isolate a middle position limp. We look down at ace-4 of clubs. Can't be folding to a $60 isolation raise from the big blind in position against the isolation raiser. So I make the call. The middle position limper decides to make the call as well. The opponent in this hand that we're playing with is definitely going to be one of the, I guess, as Ben Deach would say, the VIPs of the table. He's here to have a good time. He's not a theoretical player, thinking player. He's here to have a good time, play some fun poker and whatnot. So the flop comes king 5 deuce with 2 spades. Our opponent decides to continuation bet for $150. We make the call with our gut shot to a straight or the wheel. The middle position player gets out of the way and we are off to a turn. Their turn comes the 5 of clubs pairing the board. The opposition decides to bet $300 here, and I don't know what great deal of hands go for a double barrel. It's hard to see pocket jacks or pocket queens going for a second barrel here. I think he's pretty much condensing his range to just top pair or aces. And against that range, I'm not doing too bad, so I decide to make the call. I think a lot of his bluffs are going to contain flush draws. A lot of his bluffs are going to contain some kind of second barrel ace highs that would be blocking the king. So with all that being considered, I decide to make the call. The river comes a 9 of clubs. When he checks to me, I really don't want to check it back and lose to a hand like ace jack. So my goal here is to bet and get him off a hand that is slightly better than my own. So after a bit of thinking, I decide to bet $670 on this river. My opponent goes steep within the tank. I mean, he tanks for a really, really long time before deciding to unfortunately make the call. I show over ace-4 of clubs and he sheepishly shows ace-7 of spades. Somehow we're chopping a pot. Although I'm sure I got soul red here. I got soul red for a chop, but I don't know how the hell you can call with 2 spades there. But he read my soul. Wouldn't be the first time. You know, like what they always say, everyone loves a chopped pot. By now, they have moved me to the main game, so we're now second table in for the night. When it folds over to the cutoff, who decides to open at $30, gets over to me in a small blind, and I look down at Jack 9 offsuit. A little bit of a weak hand to be defending here, but against a cutoff open, I really don't mind it if I'm being quite honest. I feel like pretty confident in my abilities to get it to the streets, so I make the call. The big blind makes a call as well. The flop comes 5-7-8 rainbow. Definitely a really good board to donk lead sometimes. It's going to be really good for me hitting sets and whatnot, as well as the small blind. All things being considered, not a bad situation, but it does check through. The turn is a very interesting card. It comes a jack of spades. We check the action through once again to the initial raiser, who decides to delay c-bet here for $60. I decide to make the call, and the big blind decides to make the call as well. Looking for a pretty favorable river card that does come exactly what the doctor ordered. It comes a 6. We now river ourselves a straight somehow. I really don't want this to check through, and I'm hoping somebody has some kind of 2-pair or top pair situation. So I'm going to go ahead and lead out here for $140, expecting them to call a reasonable amount of the time, considering this board is fairly connected and my hand is a little bit disguised in some fashion. But not meant to be, as they both instantly decide to make the fold. But happy to take down another pot. Let's keep this energy going. In this next hand, we find ourselves on the button. There is a mandatory post from the cutoff here for $10. I'm going to go ahead and isolate this post to $60 with queen is 6 of spades. Not a great hand, but it is suited, and I am in position. The table is playing fairly passive, not fighting for a ton of pots. There is a couple of strong players on the other side of the table, but hopefully with this isolation and being in position, they're going to get out of the way. Gets over to the big blind, who is the jokester character that we spoke about earlier in the session, and he decides to make the call. The limper decides to fold. The flop comes 10-6-4, and the action checks to me. This is where I hate to spoil the end of this hand, but I want you guys to pay attention because this is something that happens so frequently in life and especially in poker. And that's when you level yourself in the craziest way. It's like he knows that I know that he knows that I know. That whole thing, that whole dynamic. Anyways, this board is actually not great for my isolation range. So when the action checks to me on a 10-6-4 board, I'm actually going to go ahead and check it back. Mostly because I don't want to bloat the pot, and the last thing I'd want to happen is for me to bet and get raised and get blown off my hand. So, like I said, I decided to check it back. The turn comes at 3 of spades, bringing my backdoor flush draw. The opponent leaves for $160, and we decide to make the call. The river is a very interesting card as it now pairs the board coming a 4, and after a little bit of tanking, my opposition decides to bet $450. With this sizing, he becomes really polar. And I ask myself the question, can he go for this bet sizing with Jack 10, Queen 10, or King 10 sometimes? And I think the answer to that equation is probably not. I think he has to have at the bare minimum Ace 10 if he has a single pair holding. And if he has anything stronger than that, for the most part, we're talking about sets at this point. Considering I check back this flop, I'm not doing myself any services here, like I said. He knows that I know that he knows that this board is not going to be favoring my range. So all that being said, I make a pretty loose call as I get tabled a turn set river boat. And unfortunate for us here, it just goes to show you, I am only human at the end of the day. And with that being said, if you guys haven't already, it would be the biggest pleasure if you folks would be so kind to drop a like, comment on the video, as well as subscribing by turning on the notification bell to be notified whenever I go live with a new video. Thanks again. With that last hand kind of giving us a little bit of the bad juju, we want to move on from that and play some better poker. We look down at King, Queen of clubs here from the under the gun position. We decide to raise to $30. It folds over to the button who decides to make the call, and we're going heads up to a flop. The flop comes 8, 5, 6, 2 spades and a club. These are the classic flops that are obviously really bad for my range and not really great for the button's range either. All that being considered, I decide to check and let him blast off here if he'd like to. He bets pretty small, betting $50. Like I said, not a huge amount, not a small amount, a little bit above half size. So I decide to make the call, floating a little bit here, looking for a better turn. The turn comes a reasonable turn, not a horrible turn. It comes a 4. It does bring the 4-liner out there, but it's the 4 of clubs, so I now pick up some extra equity. I decide to lead out here, though, playing completely out of flow and out of character, bidding $160, looking to put the pressure on. I don't know what value hands I can ever have on this board besides maybe pocket sevens, but even that's a c-bet. I just hate this play. It's horrible when I look back at it, but again, it's seeing this, writing this down, and showing you guys that I'm going to show the good, bad, and the ugly, and my goal is to learn from that. With all that being said, my opponent decides to make the call, and we're looking to get some help on the river. The help comes in the form of a queen. The queen of spades comes off on the river, and I'm in a really tricky situation. What the hell do I do? I don't want to check and have to call a large river bet, so I actually donk lead out for a small amount. $230 is what I bet. It's kind of like a merge blocker bet. I can sometimes get called by worse hands, like a crying call from ace 8, but for the most part, I'm just blocker betting. I don't want to call a huge bet against a better hand, so my opponent decides to make the call, and he shows 10-7 a diamond, so he did churn that straight, which was great for him, but I guess at the end of the day, I don't hate myself because the blocker bet actually helped me out here and saved me a little bit of money on the river. By this point in the session, we are doing the beautiful thing in poker called being up stuck. We've pretty much lost our entire profits on the session so far. When we're playing 5-handed and the cutoff decides to open to $30, we look down at ace 4 offsuit. Going to go ahead and 3-bet this in position. Most people are playing super passive pre-flop by this point. The cutoff doesn't like that very much, but he likes it enough to make the call. The flop comes jack 7-5 with 2 hearts. The opposition decides to check it at me, and I'm going to go ahead and play in flow here, c-betting to $80. He thinks about it for a little bit of time before deciding on making the call. The turn comes the ace of hearts. Pretty interesting little card here. Now, obviously, we do improve, but I don't really want to go blowing myself off my own equity. If I bet here and he raised me, that'd be pretty horrible. I'd probably be throwing up in my mouth. But I do have the 4 of hearts to fall back on if for some reason we need a flush to improve our hand and win here. So with all that being said, when he checks it to me, I'm going to go ahead and check it back. It's nice to have a hand as strong as a pair of aces in our check back range here on the turn. So we're off to a river. The river comes a great card. It pairs the bottom card. So now we have aces, 5s, and a jack kicker, improving us from our 4 high kicker. The opposition decides to lead out for a very large bet, $280. Pretty much polarizing himself, but all that being considered, I did not check back the turn to make a really tough fold. I checked back the turn to make this river call a little easier and manageable to call. So I quickly make the call, and he shows us 8-9 of clubs. We got him to bluff there. Feels good when you're running good and playing a little bit better after kind of slipping up and playing pretty bad in a couple of those hands. So after a little bit of a rocky area in the session, we find ourselves battling once again. It actually limps 3 ways when it gets to me in the big blind. And at this moment, we're playing 5, 10, 20 mandatory straddle as we are now at the 3rd table of the day. We look down at King Jack of clubs here. I'm going to go ahead and isolate here. It'd be kind of ridiculous to let this get over to the straddle and let him isolate in position. So I'd like to take the initiative in the hand and isolate here. I make it $120. Everyone calls, so that's the straddle, early position, as well as the small blind, and we're off to a flop. The flop comes ace, 7, deuce, rainbow. I'm going to go ahead and c-bet this board here. My entire range consists of a lot of top pairs in this situation, so I decide to bet. $160 to go. Folds all the way back around to the small blind, who decides to make the call. The turn is an 8. When the opposition checks to me again, I have a very easy decision. I think that's the double barrel. He can never have a really strong ace in this situation, so it's time to put the pressure on. I decide to bet $460, looking to get a little bit on the larger side, going in excess of 60% of the pot here. The gentleman tanks for quite some time before inevitably making the tough laydown. He let me know he folded ace jack. Happy we were able to get that double click through. Really nice to use our range advantage position on this player in the hand to get down a big pot. Let's go. I will let you folks know preemptively that this last hand does not disappoint whatsoever. Under the gun decides to open a $50 over the straddle. We look down at ace king offsuit here from middle position. Gonna go ahead and 3-bet it here to $150. We're trying to get in position with this player isolated. He is one of the more fun players at the table, so when it gets over to the button, he actually decides to find a 4-bet here, making it $420. I'm not sure what he's going to be doing this with, but I'd like to believe for the most part we're all trying to do the same thing, and that's isolate the under the gun player. When it folds back to the under the gun player, a little bit of time passes before he decides to jam all in. He has right around $2,000. Not a lot to do here besides looking to get it all in here. I go ahead and make the coveted 6-bet jam with ace king as we jam. The button thinks about it for some time before folding, and now we find ourselves heads up in a huge pot with ace high. We agree to run out 2 boards. The top board does come king high, and the bottom board comes out 5 high somehow. Unfortunate there, but at the very least, we were able to chop this pot up. So bringing back all the bets. Our opponent does show pocket 9s, so needed the ace or the king, and we do hit it. 5 betting 9s under the gun is pretty gangster, but like I said, we're here to have some fun. And that concludes yet another session in the beautiful Win Poker Room as we are off into the Las Vegas night. So, just wrapping up another session here. We are putting out content like it is a mission. But that about wraps it up for the time spent at the Win. Gosh, what a weird session, man. Just like, honestly, like, what a fucking weird session. I think you guys could see that just in the hands. Like, I mean, like, I think I bitched about it during the mid-session update, so forgive me for being obnoxious, but
I mean, I just could not make a hand and get value. And if, like I said, if I did make a hand, I just couldn't get the value. And then just in some spots, I just, you know, couldn't make any big hands and, like I said, get paid off. But that's poker, and I think what made this still a good session is that somehow I left with money. After all that nonsense, I still left up. So we were into today's game for $3,000 and out for exactly $3,500. So $500 profit, you know, it's not $1 million, but considering how, like, it was like meh, and that's okay sometimes. That's what makes this all right. I can't thank you guys enough for the support and the, cause it's been pretty ridiculous. Like every single episode, you guys are showing up the love and showing us appreciation that, I mean, like, I don't think I could, sometimes I sit down and I play poker and I'm just like, I gotta play for the team, you know? There's people that are depending on this vlog, you know? I feel pretty good considering everything that happened. Like it just wasn't a session we were gonna hit a home run on. And for us to get out of there, dodging some landmines and, you know, making a couple of bad calls and then also making a couple of really nice plays. It feels good to get out of there alive, of course. If you guys haven't already, make sure to click the like button down below. It costs you guys a grand total of $0, but it goes such a long way in helping our community continue to grow. I appreciate you, Win. Thank you for not killing us today. The game was very reasonable. We played 3 different tables, which sucked, but I mean, it was very much reasonable. Now we are going to go home and sleep because we have to play a WSOP tournament tomorrow. Hopefully we run deep enough to make a vlog out of it. If not, then, you know, I'm not gonna burden you guys watching me not cash and no good spots. So appreciate you guys as always. If you haven't already, like I said, make sure to click the like button down below. And if you want to leave a comment letting me know where you guys would like me to play next, that would be pretty freaking awesome too. Anyways, that's gonna do it for me. I've blabbered on enough for the end of this video. I appreciate you all. I'm grateful for you all. 15K subscribers is just over the horizon. Bless your souls. Have a nice day. And until the next time, deuces.